Good morning and welcome to The Real Outdoors, where we talk about outdoor adventures and the gear that will help get you there. If that's something that interests you, be sure to click that red subscribe button and the notification bell to keep up with all of our latest content. Today, I am going to talk about a dilemma I had, so I figured maybe you would appreciate this as well. And that is determining whether you should use a multi-tool or a Swiss Army knife for EDC, if that's what you're choosing to use as your EDC, or just as your multi-tool of preference. You know, the Swiss Army knife is kind of the original multi-tool, even before the Leatherman came out with theirs. And it can kind of be challenging to figure out which direction to go, whether you want to go with a traditional Swiss Army pocket knife type multi-tool, or, you know, the more modern Leatherman Gerber style multi-tools. For me, it came down to a choice between getting a new Leatherman Wave, my third one, or going with the Swiss Army Champ. They're both very similar in their tools that they include, but there are some differences, and it was kind of a hard decision to make. So I went with both. Hopefully this video will help you determine which direction you'd like to go if that's a dilemma you're having. I'm not really sure there's a right answer as to whether or not you should go with a Swiss Army knife or a traditional multi-tool, because it's really going to depend on what you need it for. I kind of narrowed it down to a few things that I wanted to have, and that kind of made my decision for me. So originally, I went with the Leatherman Wave over the Swiss Army Champ. Like I said, I do have both. That's kind of occurred over time, and I like having lots of tools and knives. I mean, that's the nature of the real outdoors, right? I'm kind of a collector of outdoors equipment. But I started with the Leatherman Wave, and there's a couple of reasons I went with this. One, I'm familiar with it. Like I said, this is my third one over 25 years or so. I'm familiar with it. I know it does what I need it to do. I really like the design of the Leatherman Wave. It has all the tools I'm looking for, but probably the one tool it has that the SwissChamp doesn't have is the little bit for your screwdriver. And so I went ahead and got an extra bit kit so I could switch these out and use Torx when I needed to, or Allen wrenches when I needed to, things like that. Bigger Phillips head, bigger and smaller straight slots for the differing times that you need to use it. And along with that, the Leatherman Wave also has, you know, the very, very tiny screwdriver, both Phillips and straight slot, which is great for the really small electronic screws that you have on a lot of your outdoor equipment, or eyeglasses. If you wear them, it works great for those types of screws also. And so those were a couple of things that had me leaning more towards the Leatherman Wave. You know, it was my familiarity with it. It was the fact that I knew it would do what I needed it to do, and had those bits on them that I could change out if I wanted to. Now, the one thing is, the Leatherman is not only more expensive than the SwissChamp, it also weighs a lot more. So the Leatherman Wave is about 8.4 ounces, I believe, just the wave itself. And then the SwissChamp, which is this here, it's at about 6.8 ounces, and I think it was about $68 versus right at $100 for my Leatherman Wave. So you can see there's some differences in weight and cost between the two. But like I said, I started with the Leatherman Wave. Beyond those tools that I talked about on the Leatherman Wave, they are fairly similar in what they are capable of doing. The one difference is with here, the pliers. So the Leatherman Wave also has pliers, which is part of what, or the SwissChamp also has pliers, which is part of what made me look at this model of Swiss Army knife to compare to the Leatherman Wave. But you can see, I mean, they're not even close to the same utility on these pliers. I mean, this is really more of like a beefed up tweezer than it is a pliers, versus these are usable needle nose pliers on the Leatherman Wave. I think I've talked enough about the Leatherman Wave. Let's talk about the SwissChamp. You can see this, it's like one of the top end Swiss Army knives. I think there's one other one that has more tools than this, but it costs like $400. So staying in that $50 to $100 price range, this is about the most tools you can get for a Swiss Army knife. And it actually does have more tools than my Leatherman Wave. But one of those tools that I find critically important is the pliers. And these are just not especially useful pliers. They come in handy from time to time, but I really am not sure I'd even call them pliers. They're just not big and strong enough. It does have a saw, which is something I love on my Wave as well. I use the saw quite a bit. They're both about the same. You can see the Leatherman Wave is a little bit beefier, or wider, you might say. And they're about the same length. I think the Swiss Army saw has a little bit more aggressive teeth on it than the Leatherman Wave, but they both work for what I need them to work on in that regard. I do love the toothpick and tweezers that come on the Swiss Army knives. And then the SwissChamp also comes with a pen, which I've actually used quite a bit when I've forgotten a pen, but I still have my SwissChamp with me. So that's a very cool feature. Of course, it has the corkscrew that the Leatherman Wave doesn't have, although I'm not a big wine drinker, so I'm not sure what I'd use the corkscrew for. It has a little straight pin here right underneath the corkscrew, which I think is a really cool tool, especially for the outdoors. Helps getting splinters out, or maybe some blister care and things like that if you needed it. I do like this tool. It's kind of just a little hook. It's great for picking up my pot if it's really hot from the camp stove. So that's kind of a cool tool that comes on the SwissChamp that is not on the Leatherman Wave. SwissChamp does come with scissors, and they are a little beefier and stronger than the ones on the Leatherman Wave. So if that's something that's important to you, that could be a deciding factor for you between the SwissChamp and the Leatherman Wave. Another difference that you'll find is in the knives. So it's a little bit bigger, but the main difference is the Leatherman Wave has a locking blade. The SwissChamp does not have a locking blade on it. The other thing is the SwissChamp does not have a serrated blade like this one. It has a big blade and then a smaller blade for more detailed work. But those are really your knife options on your SwissChamp versus a nice solid serrated blade and the straight blade from Leatherman. And like I said, if locking is a big issue for you, which that was another factor that steered me towards the Leatherman Wave versus the SwissChamp. I didn't want to be cranking down on something with the knife and have that come back and cut me when I'm doing it. It does have what you might call a tension lock. It doesn't easily flip back down. It's kind of held there by tension, but it's not a physical lock to keep it from coming back over on your fingers if that's a concern for you. You can see I added a clip and carry deep pocket carry for the SwissChamp, and it works pretty well that way. There aren't a lot of sheaths for the SwissChamp. There is one, but I really don't like the way it looks or the way it functions. So this is what I went with, was the deep pocket carry, and that seems to work out just fine. But it is a little big and bulky to be what I would consider a pocket knife. The SwissChamp did come with a magnifying glass, but you can see that there's no glass in there. I thought that would be a really cool tool because it acts as a fire starter when you need it to. Otherwise, I don't know why you would need a magnifying glass on a Swiss Army knife. I mean, it's not big enough to really look at a map if the map is too small. But I thought it would make a great fire starter, and it did work like that as long as I had it, but it didn't last probably 2 weeks before it fell out, and I have no idea where it went. You cannot buy just the replacement glass for it. So that's kind of a worthless tool on here. It just takes up space, doesn't really accomplish anything. So that would be one complaint on the SwissChamp. I'm not sure what good that would do. I do like the file on the SwissChamp. There is a file on the Leatherman Wave also, but I like the one on the SwissChamp better than the one on my Leatherman Wave. It's just, I find this one easier to use, and I like how it has the pointed tip versus this one doesn't. So You can use that to get in, you know, clean your nails if you want, whatever you need to get into a nice tight area. You have that pointed tip on that file. As you can tell, there are a lot of similarities between the Leatherman Wave and the SwissChamp, and some differences between the two as well. Strengths and weaknesses in both. It really comes down to a choice of what tool is right for you. Since I bought the SwissChamp, I find myself carrying it more often than the Leatherman Wave. Part of that is it's small and light enough that I can do a deep pocket carry. I've never been able to do that with this. So again, it comes down to the tool that you are going to carry. You're not going to leave at home, because it's not going to do you any good sitting at home or in your backpack or in a bag in your truck when you need it. So I find I carry this more often. Same kind of goes for all your everyday carry items. You go with the tool that you're going to carry most often, that's easiest for you to bring along with you. And for me recently, I've found that to be the SwissChamp. The tools that I need on the Leatherman Wave aren't going to do me any good if they're sitting at home or in a bag in my truck. This I have on my person, and so I'm more likely to be able to use the tools I need on it. That being said, you combine my Leatherman Wave with my clip and carry case, and now I carry that more often. So again, I'm not sure I've given you a good decision. They are similar tools, but they do serve different purposes on many occasions. And so you have to decide what's going to work for you. What are you going to carry? That's really what it boils down to. What are you going to carry, and what are you going to have with you when you need it? Be sure to give me a thumbs up if you got something out of this video, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up with all of our latest content. And I look forward to seeing you in the real outdoors.